Welcome to the Organizational Transformation Kung Fu Podcast with your hosts, Sandi and Jennifer Long.
Welcome to our newest edition of Organizational Transformation Kung Fu. We know that transformation takes time, and that's why we call our podcast OT Kung Fu. Like the art of Kung Fu, transformation takes time and practice and incredible discipline. And I'm here today with my good friend and master coach, Jen Long from Own Up in Denver, Colorado. And I'm Sandi Verrecchia, master coach with Satori Consulting in Toronto, Canada. Good morning, Jen.
Good morning, Sandi. And how is it in Toronto, Canada?
Beautiful and sunny today. How about you? You're not on a plane? That's good.
I'm not on a plane. I am in a chair, and I'm very excited about that. And it's beautiful and sunny here as well. We have only had one snowstorm, and I'm happy about that.
Wow, snow. We're not even thinking snow at all.
Not yet. It's coming.
No, it never comes. So we wanted to take a moment today and share in our delight that we have been recognized by Vitality Chicago for several categories in their Best Agile Podcast for 2023. We were recognized as one of the best podcasts for leaders, because we talk about leadership all the time. One of the best for agile coaches, because we are both master coaches, and one of the best podcasts for those seeking out women's voices. And so we're thrilled and humbled to be recognized in this way. And one of the things that we talked about after they saw the recognition was maybe we should focus some of our podcasts on women and women entrepreneurs. And so that led us to today, where we have Julie Ellis with us today to talk about her story as an entrepreneur and her latest endeavor that we're going to hear a little bit more about. So welcome, Julie.
Thank you very much.
Yay, Julie. So let me give the formal introduction of who Julie is and why we picked Julie to be on the podcast. Julie is an author, professional speaker, and leadership coach to corporate leaders and scaling entrepreneurs. Julie provides her unique experience and expertise to her coaching clients gained through 25 years of working first in the corporate world and then as a leading Canadian entrepreneur. She is co-founder of the award-winning Mabel's Labels, one of Canada's greatest small business success stories. Congratulations on that, Julie. Her book, Big Gorgeous Goals, is written for women entrepreneurs who want to step out of the small box they find themselves in and set world domination in their sights. Right? Powerpuff Girls. Here we go.
Here we go. Whoa.
Right? In discussion with over a dozen women entrepreneurs, Julie explores their stories of why and how they have achieved great things in their lives and careers, and pairs that knowledge with her own stories of how she built, grew, and sold her business to a giant in her industry. And so we're super excited to pick your brain and share all this information with the listeners, especially the female listeners. I'm sure the men can benefit as well. So yeah, I'm excited to talk about this.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Excellent. So we wanted to start off with you sharing your story with us a little bit before we sort of launch into some formalized questions that we have made. So I know a lot about Mabel's Labels. I know your business partner for many, many years. My kids use them. I still have a water bottle with, from I don't know, 15 years ago with a label on it from my daughter. And Mabel's Labels was a huge success. So why don't you tell our listeners about Mabel's Labels?
Well, really, that water bottle with a 15-year-old label on it is exactly what we set out to do. So in 2003, we had small children, and I joined forces with 3 other moms because daycare and school and activities were saying you need to label everything. And we said, well, how? And they said, well, you could use masking tape and a Sharpie. But there's really nothing permanent about that solution, and it's really not very attractive. And so we had an idea that we could do something better. And so we literally started in a basement making labels, sending a mail out to all the people we know that we could afford to buy a stamp for letters. And we got started with an e-commerce business in the sort of era of, there was no Shopify, there was no social media. There was, us standing at the soccer field and at the swimming pool and at the daycare pickup and the school pickup, telling people about what we were doing.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. Who wants to put masking tape on their kid? No one.
Nobody. No. And so now it's such a, my kids will go thrifting and they'll be like, oh, Mom, all the clothes have Mabel's labels in them. And, it's kind of funny there's never a better thrill than hearing those kinds of stories or seeing a kid walk by you with their little suitcase in the airport with their labels on it. And so, we grew that business over the next sort of 12 years up to 8 figures in revenue, and we had over 40 employees. And one day we came in and we had a phone call from Avery Labels asking us if we'd ever thought about selling our business. And although it wasn't for sale, I think when you reach that 8 figures in sales mark, and you have multiple founders, sometimes people start to slightly want different things. And although, there was still lots of potential for the business, it seemed like a really good time as we contemplated what the next era of growth would look like. It was a good time for us to take all of our money, as it turned out, off the table, and and protect the investment that we had made, and to really leverage the wealth of information and knowledge that big company would have for us.
Oh, wow.
Incredible
Great
story.
story. Great
Yeah.
story. Absolutely. So, as an offshoot of that, right? So now you are going into the Mastermind gig, and as coaches, we're familiar with the Mastermind framework, but maybe you want to tell listeners about that if you've never explored a Mastermind, what a Mastermind is all about. It's really a powerful experience when they're well designed and you've got good participants, right, who've been vetted to be there and that kind of thing. So tell us a little bit about this Mastermind idea that you've got going on and what this whole new venture for you is about.
Well, at its purest form, Mastermind is facilitated peer support, I think. And so what happened for me was, you get to 7 figures in revenue and you think, it was really hard. And now you have a few employees and you've had to build systems and processes, and you are starting to let go of some of the things, not wear all the hats in your business. And it feels like you should be able to comfortably, kind of ride what you've built for a little while. But the truth is that going from 7 to 8 figures, you're 10xing your revenue, you're 10xing your people. And that means all your processes and your systems are going to inevitably break at some point in time. And doing that alone, one of the, as we started to grow between 7 and 8, one of the things I did, I got invited to a CEO roundtable. And suddenly, I kind of came out from behind the desk and left the building for a while and went to the CEO roundtable meetings every month. And we started talking about, we'd pick a theme and we had some facilitated conversations, and, the HR issues that people were having, the scaling issues, the financial questions, just talking to people that you could relate to who may have already gone through that problem or might need your help with the problem. And so it became this real circle of trust where we were able to help each other with a lot of things. And it really opened my eyes to the power of the peer sort of mentorship idea. And I really feel like, I went from that group to wanting to really put together a group of women who would help, because I was circulating in sort of IT and finance, and I was circulating in a world where and in entrepreneurship, you're circulating in a world where there are a lot of men. And so I wanted to actually find a group of women who I could also share the sort of and how are you managing scaling up your business, scaling up your family, all of the hats that we wear
All
as
the
women.
other responsibilities, right? Yeah.
And so I started looking for some people, and we became a really tight knit group. There's 6 of us, and we still rely on each other for the honesty of that's probably a bad idea, or the help, the support, the questions, all of those things. And it's become a really important group that in my book I call my privy council. And they are the people who, see all my potential, even when I can't see where it might be. And so having that kind of a group of people who, pick you up off of the floor when you fall down, they cheer you on, they lift you up, they help you with your problems, you help them. And I think that's a really important group of people to have in our lives.
Yeah. Well,
Sounds
and I
like you
think women are
thrive.
we are sort of that community builder anyway, right? And so we've got a good tendency on how to do that. So it sounds, Julie, like you have really specifically designed it for women, and that there's a unique opportunity within this mastermind to not only grow yourself in a business, but grow yourself personally in that supportive environment to tackle all of the issues that women face in addition, which I think is super cool and super helpful. And when you're thinking about the uniqueness of that, right? So the women only, but there are also these other types of masterminds out there, right? So in the US, and I'm not sure if they're in Canada, they're probably global, like Vistage or
Mm-hmm.
Renaissance or whatever the other flavors of mastermind are out there, that it's been around a while. What is it about what you're doing that makes it different and unique?
I think that it's leveraging the experience that I had growing a business to 8 figures and then running an 8+ figure business in the after of selling my business. That it just brings to the table a little bit of a different flavor. And I also have built a big network of experts over the course of time. People who came up with me as entrepreneurs, people who are, advisors, mentors, all of the different pieces. And I think that, my ability to leverage them and to bring that knowledge into the mastermind is really what I'm looking for in terms of a little bit of a secret sauce kind of recipe for me. And I think that people find me because they're interested in, how we did what we did and how we got to where we did. And so it seemed like an opportunity to me. I'm also I've done a bunch of angel investing since we sold the business. Now that investing is really purely I will only invest in women from this point on, because, women get 2% of venture capital. They start more businesses than men, but they don't grow them as big. And so for me, that's really where this is all coming from. Like, if you want to grow an 8-figure business, and I recognize it is not for everyone, but if you are unsure and you want to figure it out and you decide you do, you are unusual in this world. And so, there are programs out there that support women in that zone, but there's not a lot of them. And I think that it's really important to put that network around you when you want to grow, because it will be a hard road and you cannot do it alone. It's harder to do alone. It's more stressful. It's lonely. You question yourself more, and you really, getting that, group of support and that real landing spot is just so, so important.
Correct. So Jen and I are both entrepreneurs, and we've been at this a long time. We run, both in our own right, successful organizations. We're sort of your target audience, I think, for your mastermind group. How would you help us decide if shifting from 7 to 8 figures is for us?
I think that one of the pieces is around, where's your happy spot in terms of what you want to do in your business? And are you willing, if you want to grow an 8-figure business, do you want to lead a large team? Because leading a team is your hands are on a different place, right? When you're leading people, as opposed to doing things within your business. It's the working in versus working on. And people talk about that all the time as entrepreneurs. Are you working in your business or on your business? And it's a really big shift to working on your business most of the time, and to managing a big team of people. And there are, a lot of entrepreneurs that do not want to manage people. So then the second question is, okay, great. So you're going to grow to 8 figures. Are you going to hire somebody to lead to lead that? Are you going to hire a CEO who can lead all the people so that you can stay within your zone of genius. And that's a perfectly fine yes answer. But it's the no, I want 8 figures, but I don't want to have to do all of these things, right? Like there's a reckoning. And that's why I think it is a decision point about what you want to do with your business.
How hard
Because
was your reckoning point? Because obviously you've been through that.
we always dreamed, like literally when we did that first mail out, we made a spreadsheet of all the people we knew. We figured out how much money we had to spend on stamps. We cut the spreadsheet list back because we had more people than stamps on that list. And we sat at the night, we stuffed the envelopes and opened a bottle of, like, I don't know, baby duck or something that somebody had sitting around and said, here's to the IPO one day. And so we always had big in our minds. And that continued because although we were first to market in North America, our first competitor landed on the scene like 5 or 8 months after ordering from us. They used all our suppliers. They copied chunks of our website. Like that also lit fires under us that kept, because I think we felt like we weren't particularly unique in terms of people could follow us and make labels that were durable. But what we could bring was innovation. We could keep introducing new products and we could build a brand that people would recognize that it meant there was a community behind it. There were real people who cared about how hard it was to be a parent. What it actually, like, who did you ask your questions to? What products did you love? Where did you go for resources? Like all of those pieces, we focused on that. But having those competitors behind us, it did really keep that fire lit for us of trying to stay ahead, be better, do more, all of those things.
Mm-hmm. It is an incredible brand, without a doubt. I think there's nobody, certainly that I know, that doesn't know about Mabel's Labels and the fun aspect of it. It's a unique place to work and a unique product, and it's fun.
Yeah.
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 Well, and it sounds, when you talk, Julie, it sounds very much like you had a team environment. It's a very we thing in your mind and as you speak to it. And so is there a difference between when you've got the we, right, of your business versus the woman who's really kind of running it and driving it and doesn't feel like like this is her decision and there's no we there? Is there a difference there in your mind? I mean, it feels like, moving to that level, a we thing makes the jump a lot easier versus how do I do this on my own?
Well, the other thing of going from 1 million in sales to 10 is the leadership evolution that's required, right? And I feel like that's sort of what we're tipping into here, because you as a leader at 1 million overseeing a handful of people and a much less complex business are not the same leader you need to be, when you have dozens of people working for you and the business is a lot more complicated. And so, to me, it's really about what do I need to do to evolve myself as a leader to, get to that place. And I think the we word for me comes in because it couldn't have been done without those key team members, and they needed to be, feel valued and feel like their contribution was making a difference. And like we wanted them at the table to tell us what they really thought. And I think that, that's where it comes to this, we couldn't pay the highest salaries. We were a small entrepreneurial business. Even when we had 40 people, we were still a pretty small business in the, it felt big to us, but in the scheme of the business world. And so, the culture we could offer and the work environment and why people wanted to come to the office every day was what we had control over. And, we could pay a fair wage. I'm not saying we underpaid, but, there's a high and there's a low in any market. And, we knew we couldn't sit at the highest part. It wasn't affordable for us.
Yeah.
So that's where it comes down to, like,
yeah.
You want people to want you, right? So we needed to create an environment where people wanted to be a part of it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. Environment is so important, especially now, right? Especially now where it's really hard when you're coaching in business right now. And there's this, we got to get everybody back. We got to do this stuff. And the coming to terms with the fact that the pandemic made us all different, made
Mm-hmm.
everything different. And how people view work now is so different than how it's been viewed. And I think that understanding the camaraderie around many leaders talking about that struggle just in and of itself is helpful for people to get perspective on what I'm experiencing isn't any tougher than what's everybody else is experiencing, and we're all in this together and we're all navigating, and that's a great thing.
Yeah, so I wanted to touch on, you talked about, you had to really assess your leadership skills, and what did you need to do differently when you're in this scaled up business? And so, what were the 1, 2, 3 most important leadership traits do you think that you needed to either shore up or skill up or just bring to the table?
I think like shoring up decision making was one really important thing, because as the business grew and the decisions felt more complicated, well, they were more complex, but they also felt heavier because, making the right decision meant you'd be able to meet payroll and pay your team. And, so like you start, the more people, like the more it's like that pressure of the decision comes down. And one of the things that I really needed to learn was some frameworks for making decisions and figure out what frameworks worked for me and how I was going to make decisions so that I could start saying things to my team like, I love that idea, but if you want me to say yes to it, I need something of a business case behind it. I need to see some numbers. Like I can't say yes based on a sales pitch without some evidence to show me why I should say yes. Or I could understand that hesitating on a decision or not making it was also a decision. And the kind of leader that showed me to be to my team wasn't really what I wanted, right? Like I wanted them to see me as somebody who, took down the barriers they needed for them to get their work done every day, for them to understand where we were going and not be like, well, I don't understand why they won't make a decision on that. Like we can't, we feel kind of stuck. And, so I think that decision-making piece is one really important part. I think another really important part is understanding communication and how, as a business grows and becomes more complex, it needs more communication, even to the point where you're like, okay, I've said that 4 times already. And it's like, yep, let's go for number 5, because people need to hear that consistent message, and they need to maybe see the message, hear the message, understand the message. It needs to be able to get through to them. So upping your communication and spending more time thinking about how to communicate things comes with that territory. And then I think the other thing is, looking for some kind of, like, I ended up working with a coach for many, many years. And that's probably the reason I ended up doing what I'm doing now, to be honest, is because of her. And that was so important for me to have somebody who could be a sounding board for me, because I couldn't, in the early days with such a small team or just the founding group, we used each other as sounding boards, but you get to a point as a leader where you're not using your team as a sounding board so much anymore for, where you want to take things. And so it's important to build those pieces so that you can go off, have your sounding boards, kind of make your decision, come back, and then you have that communication piece where, it looks like you have it all together and you know what you're doing, even though you may still feel like you don't know.
Well, and I think there's a little bit of intimidation when you get into a mastermind group where you're showing up as a business leader with a bunch of other business leaders in different kinds of businesses. I'm assuming that there's no competing businesses in the groups. And it's always a level of vulnerability, right? To
Yes.
get in there and kind of show up with here's the stuff I don't know.
Yes. And then there's always that moment where, oh, I thought I was the only one. Like I always feel like that moment comes where you're like, oh, I feel seen. You find that, like, yes, you have to open the door to the vulnerability, but suddenly you feel seen and you feel understood and you can understand where other people are at. Because it's like the duck, they always talk about the duck paddling furiously underwater, but above water, it looks perfectly calm, right? And it is that sort of feeling, I think, because I always think about anytime I felt like I knew what I was doing, there was something coming, because you're constantly, like, that kind of growth trajectory where you're constantly trying to grow a bigger business, you are climbing. You're climbing and you're climbing and you're climbing. And that means you're learning. You're pushing yourself outside of, like what you thought maybe was your capacity or what you knew before. And you have to figure out ways to find that.
I think that's so true, though, Julie, in the sense of that the exhaustion of the never-ending learning curve, and I think
Yes.
that's where the support is so invaluable, because it can be exhausting and isolating.
Yes.
Because when you go from the 7 to the 8, it's a big jump, right? It's a game changer in how it all works together, and what you thought you had is not what you have. It's very, very different. And so maybe talk a little bit about the psychology of that. I mean, in terms of how you support in the mastermind, or just really that kind of ambition, and that kind of focus. And you talk about systems breaking and realizing it's not the same, and how you handle that.
And you have to handle it by being, like it's a cycle. I'm going to put a system into place. And the trick when you're growing is you can't put a system in at 1,000,000 that's good for you at 10. And so you've got to put a system in, though, that's going to last you for like 3 years. So you've got to figure out, like, what does the cycle look like? So how far away is 10? When do I need that system? But what's going to bridge me between now and then? Because if you put in something too big, heavy, complicated, it's not going to get adopted and it's not going to be worth it. So it's also like finding this scale of what are the right things for you that are going to last more than a month or 6 months, but they're not 10-year solutions either. And getting used to that idea that, it's a cycle, it's a normal cycle, and this is how it's going to work. I'm going to put something in, we're going to get this much out, 3 years out of it. At 18 months, we're going to look for what the next solution is so that it doesn't break before we get there. And honestly, a lot of that was learned the hard way because it broke before we got there. Or
Right?
or we had projects where we were launching products and we're like, why can't we launch a product anymore without it going terribly wrong? What's happening here? And we learned things like, we didn't want to make the project table a lot bigger because we thought it was a waste of money because it got to be a very expensive meeting. But what we needed to do was bring everybody who needed to be at the table to the table and run an efficient meeting. And so, how do you do that? Because it was all communication. It needed more communication. More people needed to know the business had more moving parts. And so it's figuring out things like that and figuring out what will get you to the next stage, to the next stage, and to the next stage. And also figuring out, like for us, we ended up building some custom software, which I would not suggest as your first thing you should do. But we did because, model. We didn't have $1 million to spend on software and we couldn't find what we needed. And so, that was the road we ended up going down. And it was transformational for our business for sure. But it is those kinds of decisions where, and how do you, when you write your own software, like how do you write software that's going to scale the business that you're not going to run out of runway on? Because as soon as you write it, you've got technical debt that you're going to end up with. And so it's figuring out like, how do you not get too far into debt on anything, right? So that you can sort of keep investing and, keep cycling forward and know that nothing will last forever. So, there's no point in being like, well, that's that. I'll never have to do that again, because that's never going to be the case. And so it's also building the resilience, I think, that you need as an entrepreneur to understand that that's just what the cycle looks like. And that, it's not you didn't do anything wrong. You didn't make bad choices. That's how it works when you're growing a business.
Yes. Yes. And I will tell you, after working with large companies, this idea of cycling and being in strategy kind of all the time is something that they all need to learn, because the pace of change and all that kind of stuff is so rapid anymore that being strategic all the time, where it's really 6-month sprints. It's not this, we're going to do strategy for the next 3 years thing. It just doesn't work that way. Mm-hmm. It's a huge, huge skill.
Yeah. So in your mastermind group, Julie, how will you determine the best mix of people to be in the group? Is it just people that want to join, or are you going to try to pair people up?
Yeah, so we start out with, gauging interest to join. I have a couple of diagnostic things to run people through to, help them decide if they're really ready to take the step. And then it is, meeting with me, spending a bit of time with me and talking through what their hopes are, building a little bit of a framework over the course of a couple of calls to just make sure that there's a fit. Make sure that I'm the person that they want to do this with. And if I'm not, that they take away some amount of value to understand where they want to go next.
I love that, because the many of the CEO type farms that I know, it's more about bums in seats for the money of it, as opposed to looking for right fit and all that sort of thing. So I love the fact that you're being so intentional about creating groups that are going to work and people that really want to grow.
Yeah, I think it's really important to find the right fit for the people that you want to work with on the growth path, the people that you choose as your advisors and coaches. I think it's super important.
Yeah, because it's kind of a mini advisory board.
Yes, it is. Absolutely.
What's the commitment? I mean, is it a month to month? Is it a year-long commitment? What does that look like for you?
It's a 6-month commitment. So in this, I'm calling this group the beta group. So I've done some work with people getting ready to get to this point, and I'm calling this group the beta group. So we're going to do a 6-month where we close the group for that 6 months and get some feedback on how that feels. Because I think that, having consistent people, like once we build that circle of trust, I think having a consistent group is important. And I also think that, 6 months is a commitment that makes sense in terms of we can get a lot done in 6 months. We'll get to know each other well. We can make a lot of progress. And then at the end of 6 months, people can decide if they want to renew or if they want to move on and do something else.
And is it a monthly gathering?
So we will have a monthly gathering for the mastermind. We will have an expert talk monthly, and there will be a one-on-one coaching session monthly.
Very, very good.
Very good. Very good. I had a question I was just going to ask you about that. Oh, so virtually now? So it used to, people would get together?
Do it virtually. We're going to do it virtually, and considering the option at the end of having some kind of summit where we physically get together.
Okay. And only in Canada, international?
No. Open to anybody. We'll use the time zone in the sort of 10 till 12 range, and I'm in the Eastern time zone. So that suits a lot of different, people on the West Coast, it's early morning. People, if they were in Europe, it would be in the early evening, but it would accommodate a lot of the different time zones.
Excellent. So when you started Mabel's Labels, you talked about the baby duck and sort of thinking big at that moment. Are you thinking of making this something that's big, where you bring in coaches that will have their own mastermind group and things like that? So it's really scaling it up?
Yes, potentially with other coaches, or potentially with different streams of masterminds for people with product businesses or service businesses, those kinds of things. Because I do think there are some differences in terms of, there are a lot of similarities and some differences in terms of what people might be looking for.
Yeah, true.
Yeah.
It's different when you're not selling widgets.
Yeah. Yes. And yet you can learn from people who sell widgets too. Yeah. So it's sort of one of those pieces of like not fully separated, but there might be some specialized content that makes sense.
For sure. For sure. Well, it sounds like a really cool and fabulous opportunity for women who want to go big and who want to really, get some help and some support and some learning and not have to sweat as hard.
Do it alone.
They might otherwise, right?
Yeah.
That's fantastic. So you also have this book, Big Gorgeous Goals. Tell us a little bit about that and where listeners can find your book.
Yeah. I started writing the book because I was really interested about why there are some women who do these amazing things and leave some of us in the dust of our to-do lists, right? And so what's the difference? Because what we see publicly is, it's the highlight reel of people's lives, right? So you see the achievement, but you don't really understand what it took to get there. And so I started sort of examining, especially for me in the after of selling Mabel's Labels, I did struggle to figure out what would be next. I reached for a pinnacle for so long that sitting on a plateau was very uncomfortable for me. And I started really thinking about this question of like, why do some of us do these great things? Why do others struggle? And, now I'm sitting in the struggle side, and I'm interested in that sort of tension between the two things. And I started writing some of the book, and it is a lot about systems, processes, and people. And I also wanted to include other people's stories within the book because I think that lends to a richer experience in terms of why. Like, is it just me? Do other people feel this way? And I thought it was interesting because you have people like I'm a systemizer and an operationalizer. Like, I always think of myself, I come up this way. And then there are the great big blue sky thinkers who come down. And I, as I'm interviewing people and we come at it from all these different perspectives, it really did come down to like systems, processes, and people. And inevitably, we all thought the ingredients were the same, no matter what way we came at it from. And so that was really interesting to me. And I interviewed some amazing people, and it was a really interesting experience. And I'm so glad that I was able to include them in the book.
Fantastic.
And where do people get your big, gorgeous
You can buy it on Amazon. As an author, we're all beholden to the Amazon gods because that's how our book gets found, is when it's bought and sold on Amazon.
That is a fact.
Yeah. So Big Gorgeous Goals, How Bold Women Achieve Great Things.
Excellent. And if people are interested in reaching out about this mastermind, how are they going to find you there?
They can find me on LinkedIn. They can also find me at julieellisandco.com. Or they can email me at julie@julieellisandco.com.
Julie Ellis, ELLIS, for those who need to spell.
You got it.
All right. Very good. Well, Julie, it's been really awesome talking to you and meeting you, and definitely going to read the book and look at some things and, think bigger, obviously.
Yes. Thank you so much for joining us and sharing your story. And we wish you lots of success in your new endeavor.
Thank you so much for having me. It was really great chatting with you today.
All right. And leave us your comments. And if you have questions for Julie, you can put them in the bottom and we'll get them to her. Or you can email her because she put her email out. All right. We'll talk to you next time. Thanks.
Thank you so much for listening. You can check out Sandi's website at satoriconsultinginc.ca. That's SATORI consultinginc.ca. And visit Jen's website at own-up.com. Thanks again, and we'll see you next time.